Okay, this video is about how to improve athletic performance. And first of all, the thing I want to show you that's new, and this is from me, is this diagram here. You might want to hit the print screen button for this. Basically, you need your mitochondria to produce energy, to produce ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And, I had read a lot of articles about dementia, about diabetes, chronic fatigue syndrome. And I knew there were all kinds of things that were sort of damaging the mitochondria, but I went to all my biochemistry books. I own about 7 of them, and there was nothing about mitochondrial inhibition. So I started going through the journal articles, and I quickly found over 50 chemicals that inhibit mitochondria. And some of the most important ones to know for someone trying to improve athletic performance is that, number one, you don't want to eat processed food. The processed food company doesn't want that food to spoil. So what they're going to do is they're going to put a lot of mold inhibitors into the food, antifungals. And those antifungals very often are mitochondrial inhibitors, and those can potentially inhibit the mitochondria inside a person and decrease energy levels. So you don't want that. You don't want to eat high-fat foods before athletic performance because they inhibit complex 3 of mitochondria that can decrease your insulin, decrease insulin sensitivity, and it can decrease your energy, decrease your athletic performance. I also would not do things like I wouldn't drink water with fluoride in it because fluoride is a mitochondrial inhibitor, inhibits complex 4. So that could potentially drop your energy levels. And there's a lot of things that are quite common. Things like Tylenol that can inhibit it as well. Atrazine, which is sprayed on GMO corn. So I wouldn't be eating that. GMO corn, often, processed foods will be sweetened with high fructose corn syrup, and that will often be processed through a chloralkali vat that puts mercury into it. So that's a complex 1 of intermitochondrial membrane inhibitor. So that could potentially decrease your energy production, athletic performance. I wouldn't go anywhere that's really smelly. Like I wouldn't go to the dry cleaner, for example, because there's chemicals in there like trichloroethylene, TCE. That's a mitochondrial inhibitor. So you would want to avoid all these things. You want to avoid anything with oil in it. Omega-6 cooking oils leads to a series of reactions called lipid peroxidation reactions that produce toxic aldehydes like HNE, hydroxynonenal, that is a mitochondrial inhibitor. A lot of common medications are mitochondrial inhibitors like serotonin selective reuptake inhibitors for treatment of depression. So you want to be careful about those sorts of things. The dyes in processed food, the food dyes, are often mitochondrial inhibitors, okay? And there's other things, but anyways, just knowing to avoid those as a way that you can potentially increase your energy level, significantly improve athletic performance. Okay, the other thing I found helpful is beet juice. Beet juice has a lot of nitrates in it, and those are nitric oxide precursors. It's one of the highest levels of nitric oxide precursors, so that can help. Also, you guzzle it down, it's sweet a little bit, and that will increase your blood glucose level. There's 32 ounces in this bottle. It doesn't have to be this brand. This is just one brand I'm aware of here. It could be some other brand. It's going to increase your hydration, increase your blood glucose level, and give you nitrate vasodilators to open up your arteries so you can get more blood flow to your muscles. You can chase it down with some type of water. It doesn't have to be this. I preferably would drink reverse osmosis water. I prefer that. And I know that I've done this tons of times and my performance has improved on high repetition squats. And also when I give long talks, I sometimes give 2-hour, 3-hour long lectures. My endurance level's better. The words come to me faster. And I try to challenge myself for personal best in weightlifting. I'm just better after I've guzzled down this beet juice. I've also read papers on time trials on stationary bike for bicycle racers. Their performance are improved with beet juice. So that's one thing that might be helpful to you. Psychology of sport. I'm going to go into some great athletes who I was lucky enough to know. But just the gist of it is what's called the Yerkes-Dodson curve. You want your stress level for competition to be increased to the level that you're highly motivated for optimal performance. You want to go for it. You are ready. You're warmed up, ready to go. I like to keep the room warm enough that I'm nice and warmed up. Do a little bit of warm-up exercises, but don't exhaust yourself. But be, ready to go, intense. You know, you need to be psyched up because that optimizes your strength. You get all your hormones maxed out, but you don't want to be too anxious because that'll impair your performance. So you have to figure out what it takes for you to get into that level. The Maximum Achievement book by Brian Tracy is good. For sports, too, I used to like the Maxwell Maltz books, Psycho-Cybernetics, about getting psyched up for athletic performance. Lots of great athletes used to read that. I can remember when I was a young athlete myself. We used to read all that stuff, and it was helpful. Okay, this is a guy who was my wrestling coach in college, Mark Schultz. He's like a three-time NCAA champ, world and Olympic champion. And he did some interesting things. He would not speak to anybody for 1 week, sometimes 2 weeks before a big tournament. And somehow by not talking to anybody, his psychology would just get maxed out for performance. And I saw it. The guy wouldn't speak to anybody for a week or two. And then when he get on the mat, he was like Superman, unbelievably energetic and powerful. And he just noticed that he had more energy and power when he was quiet for a week or two before a competition. There was something scary about him too. He'd wear sunglasses and stuff, and it was awesome to watch. It was, this is one of the greatest matches, perhaps the greatest college wrestling match of all time, where he defeated Ed Bannock, who was like a two-time defending national champion from Iowa. And here he is after the victory. That's his brother Dave, who was 1 year older than him. Okay, and this guy Dave, when I first met him at wrestling camp, he was fat, weak, and slow when we had the first month of wrestling practice over at Stanford. And I wondered, how did a guy who was fat, weak, and slow become a national champion and later a world champion? And here's a picture of him, one of his world competitions. And, compared to the other guys, and this is when he was in top shape, he still is a little pudgy. He's not as strong like as your typical wrestler. What I learned about him is a philosophy of incrementalism, which I applied to other things in life, especially for me, academics. Basically, most wrestlers, they're happy to have, a couple good moves for every situation. A couple good takedowns on their feet, a good escape from below, at least one good technique to put the guy on their back. Whereas Dave Schultz wanted to learn every single thing you could learn about wrestling. When he was a kid, he was dyslexic and fat. His nickname was Pudge, and the other kids used to pick on him, hey, you fat, stupid idiot, things like that. And so he went out for wrestling. He really liked it, and he would just stay on the mat for hours and hours, and drive the coaches crazy. He'd keep on wanting to learn more technique. By the time he was in 8th grade, he would ride his bicycle over to the high school. He grew up in the Stanford area, Palo Alto. He'd ride his bike over to Pali High, then he'd ride his bicycle over to the college practice. So, as a young guy, he was practicing with, seniors in high school and college guys. By the time he was a senior in high school, he was the best high school wrestler in the whole world, best high school wrestler ever. He defeated the two-time national champion from Iowa, caught him in a throw. And so his technique was phenomenal. Like, you could ask a college wrestling coach, how do you finish a single leg from the feet? And they would basically give you, like 3 options. You could switch off to double leg. You could do a treetop, or you could do a dump, okay? He would know about 25 options in every counter to the counter to the counter to the counter. Basically like what Bruce Lee was to martial arts, that's what he was to wrestling. And so what I learned from him was you don't have to have that much physical ability if you're able to learn all the technique, because it gives you an exponential advantage on other people. You can have 1,000 times better technique than someone else as a wrestler. I wasn't aware of that when I was young. I wish I'd learned more technique. Versus you can only get, about 10-15% stronger than the other guys. There's always going to be a lot of really strong guys. There's other guys who have great endurance, but technique, you could be 100 or 1,000 times better than them. So find out what is the potential exponential advantage you can achieve in your sport. Here's another guy who was a contemporary wrestler of mine. This is John Smith, and he's a guy out of Oklahoma. And there's a couple unique things about him. He was a little bit like Dave Schultz in the sense that he was obsessive about developing really sophisticated technique. You just look at the guy. He's not that strong or powerful or quick or athletic. He was just sort of a brilliant technical wrestler like Dave Schultz. And one of the things I found interesting about him was when he won the world championship, and he had a lot of options for coaching and other things. He chose to live in a really Spartan environment, just a real sort of simple environment, no frills, really minimized his expenses, just totally simplified his life so he could focus on wrestling. And I've seen that to be a great secret of super achievers. He went on to win 6 world championships. A secret of super world achievers is just that. They simplify their life completely. They only focus on the one big thing in their life. And the Schultz brothers were like that. And all these guys are national champions and world champions. And so you really can perform at a much higher level if you're willing to simplify your life and avoid all distractions. Okay, now here's a guy, I'm showing you this. This is Stanford, and he was like a world champion in powerlifting, and he's a bodybuilder. And here he is as a young guy. So you can obviously tell he's taking steroids, all right? And he's a little bit of a crazy guy, and he says some things I don't agree, but I like him. His heart's in the right place. And the reason I'm showing him to you in the context of improving athletic performance is that he was out in Las Vegas, and it's really hot, like over 100 degrees in heat, and he was sweating like crazy. And he said for him, what improved his athletic performance in that context was to make sure that he had adequate sodium replacement. Okay, so I just let you know, if you're sweating a lot, you'll need more sodium. Because normally, in the context of a vegan health site, we're not big on extra sodium. But if you're sweating a lot, you maybe need it in that special context. So I just show you Stanford. His nickname is the White Rhino. Okay, now here's another guy, a little crazy, but real smart, kind of entertaining. This is Durian Ryder, and he's got his channel. It's just called Durian Ryder. And what I like about him is he practices what he preaches. He competes in races for riding bicycles and running, and he's spent a lot of time thinking about what improves athletic performance. And in his opinion, having more sugar increases your energy level. Also, caffeine, he felt, for bicycle distance riding improved his performance. I don't know the distance he's going right there, but all I'm saying is he's a little bit interesting, a little bit crazy, but he's smart, and he has tested it out, and he coached a lot of athletes, so you might find that interesting. It depends on your sport. There's a difference between riding a long distance bicycle race or a triathlon versus doing a sprint or doing powerlifting, okay? So it depends on what you need, fast twitch fibers, slow twitch fibers, but I'm just showing you a couple examples of innovative athletic ideas. Here is Kipchoge. He's a Kenyan guy, and he set the world record for a marathon. He finished a marathon in less than 2 hours, and he was kind of famous for drinking a lot of iced tea and putting tons of sugar in it. Now, I wouldn't eat that on a daily basis for health reasons and protecting your teeth from cavities and stuff, but I'm just letting you know, for running a 2-hour marathon, it worked pretty well for him. He's the all-time world record. So anyways, that's all I got for this. I hope that was interesting to you.